Bitcoin critics for a long time have been talking about the fact that they believe the US government and other governments around the world are going to ban ownership of Bitcoin. Now, of course, there is precedent for government stepping in and banning ownership of assets. Go back to the 1933, there was an executive order that the president signed, and eventually there was multiple pieces of legislation put forward that forced Americans to stop hoarding gold. The idea was that the Federal Reserve needed access to more gold, and they couldn't shut down gold production. And so instead, they actually needed to ramp up their access. And so what they said was, you as a private citizen are not allowed to hoard gold. You must turn it in. There was a fixed price, right around $20 at the time. They said, you have to give us your gold, we'll pay you for it, and then you are not allowed to hoard it moving forward. And so these Bitcoin critics, they've been saying the same thing, that the government, the central bank, and militaries around the world, they may not be able to shut down the Bitcoin network. But actually what we should anticipate is that those governments are going to move in and they're going to ban ownership of Bitcoin. Now, of course, this seems kind of outrageous in today's day and age that a government would move in to actually ban ownership of an asset, especially when politicians hold the asset, our largest financial institutions hold the asset, and other nation states around the world are starting to adopt it as legal tender. Well, the Bitcoin critics didn't see what happened yesterday coming. Yesterday, a sitting U.S. Congressman, Representative Tom Emmer, put forward a proposal not to ban Bitcoin ownership, but actually to ban the Federal Reserve from issuing directly to American citizens a central bank digital currency. That's right. The U.S. sitting congressman did not ban Bitcoin. Instead, he is trying to ban a central bank digital currency. He said as other countries like China develop CBDCs that fundamentally omit the benefits and protections of cash, it is more important than ever to ensure the United States' digital currency policy protects financial privacy, maintains the dollar's dominance, and cultivates innovation. He then said CBDCs that fail to adhere to these three basic principles could enable an entity like the Federal Reserve to mobilize itself into a retail bank, collect personally identifiable information on users, and track their transactions indefinitely. Not only does this CBDC model raise single point of failure issues, leaving Americans' financial information vulnerable to attack, but it could be used as a surveillance tool that Americans should never be forced to tolerate from their own government. Requiring users to open an account at the Fed to access a United States CBDC would put the Fed as an insidious path akin to China's digital authoritarianism. Any CBDC implemented by the Fed must be open, permissionless, and private. This means that any digital dollar must be accessible to all, transact on a blockchain that is transparent to all, and maintain the privacy elements of cash. In order to maintain the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency in a digital age, it is important that the United States leads with a posture that prioritizes innovation and does not aim to compete with the private sector. Simply put, we must prioritize blockchain technology with American characteristics rather than mimic China's digital authoritarianism out of fear. Now, this is absolutely fascinating. This is a sitting U.S. politician who is saying the United States, we have to preserve financial privacy. We have to encourage innovation, and we have to continue to be the shining light on a global stage for economic prosperity. A central bank digital currency, if used incorrectly, would actually violate those three principles. It could actually hurt the U.S. dollar's global reserve status. It could infringe on Americans' financial privacy, and it could actually decelerate our pace of innovation. China is serving as the example of exactly what authoritarian governments want to do. They want to use it for financial surveillance. They want to prevent their citizens from doing certain things. That's not what the principles that America was built on. America shouldn't implement a central bank digital currency if that's what we're going to do. The Federal Reserve is already losing trust, and people are questioning what their motives are. But if we were simply to allow for a central bank digital currency to be created by the central bank and issued directly to Americans, that would give the central bank and the government the ability to know how much money is in your bank account. Who are you transacting with? What are you purchasing? When? How much? That's information that the government frankly doesn't need. It's an infringement on our financial privacy. Instead, what we need is the ability for Americans to protect their financial privacy. We need the ability for private enterprise to actually drive innovation. I don't want to trust the central bank or my government to be innovative. I don't want them to be competing on a global stage with other companies and other countries when it comes to technology. The same people who run the DMV probably also who run our public health policy, who have proven themselves to be incompetent in many ways. Why are we going to trust them with a piece of technology that quite literally our country's reserve status and also our place of economic prosperity and leadership depends on. Instead, we're much better off having private enterprise compete to produce the single best asset. And of course, Bitcoin being a decentralized, transparent, digital, open source project has garnered over $1 trillion of value. There's a reason why the free market has determined Bitcoin specifically to have value. But also we have seen over $100 billion of value flow into stablecoins. Those stablecoins have the same exact monetary policy as US dollars, but they're actually being created and governed and distributed by private companies. The government isn't even needed to actually get over $100 billion of value into these stablecoins. And so if we're able to get the same end result, the same end benefit to users around the world by using the private enterprise rather than public taxpayer money or organizations like the central bank, we probably should let the private enterprises do what they do best, compete on the global stage. Because ultimately, the free market is going to be the referee, and we need to move quickly, we need to move efficiently, and we need to take this stuff seriously. And so kudos to Representative Emmer on his courageous step to say, listen, we should actually not ban Bitcoin ownership. We should ban a central bank digital currency being created and distributed directly to Americans by the Federal Reserve.